Professor, you've outlined a number of critiques of supply management, Canadian supply management, as a model for, not reducing costs and not promoting growth. Let's put it that way. Of course, it's been around for over 4 decades. So, can you explain why you think or hope that things should change now?
The big one for me is, I think that it has a tremendous uh, or potential to limit our ability to sign trade agreements.
Right.
Uh, and I realize that yes, we've had supply management predominantly located in southern Ontario and Quebec. The dairy sector is a strong employment opportunity. It provides a lot of economic contributions to small rural towns. But the cost of doing that is now measured in the tens and hundreds of millions of dollars on an annual basis. And there's no ec- economical argument to preserve small, inefficient farming operations. We all want to support Canadian agriculture and Canadian food production, and there's lots of opportunities to do that. We may see in some markets an increase in American products coming into our market, but it also increases our opportunity to be more export oriented, which would even further increase employment opportunities. So it's not like these smaller farms in Quebec or Ontario would disappear, but it allows those operations to be increase their production, bring in more dairy cows, and create even additional jobs. So I think those that say, oh, it would be the end of dairy production in Ontario or Quebec simply are adopting a very closed-minded perspective by assuming that those farmers are not able to be competitive. And the one thing that farmers across this country are is they are resilient and have shown incredible ability to adapt to changing economic and environmental circumstances. And I have no reason to believe that if competition was opened up in supply management sectors, that Canadian farmers in those sectors would not be among the most competitive in the world.
All right. So, let's say you or I can wave a magic wand and supply management is out the door. So, take us through how one could transition the Canadian economy without supply management, and reduce harm to farmers and so on who have been used to this system. Maybe take us through how to get from where we are right now to where we should be in your estimation.
Yeah, so this wouldn't be a snap of the fingers or a wave of the wand, and overnight it suddenly evaporates, right?
Mhm.
This would, most of the trade agreements that Canada has in place are designed to remove protections over a 10-year, sometimes a 15-year period. So certainly that is the kind of time framing that should be considered for this. That you know say 10% of quota would become commercially available, and any farmer that wants to contribute into that space would have the ability to do so. A lot of dairy farms have used their quota as a financial backstop for loans, for operating lines of credit.
Mm.
So the government would need to provide some level of reassurance that as we transition to a perfectly competitive market, that our financial institutions don't immediately say, oh, well, quota is not worth anything, so therefore we're going to recall all of those loans, and then potentially push some farmers into bankruptcy, which would needlessly be the result. So the government would need to provide some type of a fiscal backstop to ensure that financial institutions are not acting adversely and trying to drive farms out of business.
Yeah, we've got about 15 seconds left here. So it would be a multi-year process, right? And there would be
Yes.
ways to protect Canadian farmers as they transition out of that. Is that what you're envisioning?
Yes, I think there is a role for government in this transition, but
Right.
but it needs to be considerably less than it is today.